Hi, I'm Owen, and welcome to my dev diary. We'll be starting this dev diary off with Game Jam 1, the one button game. So for the one button game, it was the first time I worked with another team member, and I got really lucky. I got another game artist for my first ever team member. So we knew that we wanted to make the game look as artsy as possible and look as good as possible. Neither of us had used Unreal Engine before, but we decided that I would do the Unreal Engine blueprint code and also be in charge of creating the character and player itself, and all 3D environmental assets would be made by Callum. So in this video I'll be focusing on my part and showing you how I made the character and the one button game and what I learned from this. So I decided to use Blender to create my models, as that was what I am most familiar with. We went for a low poly style for the game so that we could create as many assets as possible within the 2 weeks. We had to think about textures, so I came up with the idea of using a atlas so that we could have one texture for the entire game, and the models would apply the texture to themselves using the UVs. So that was really beneficial, as it really fast-tracked the way that I made the character and also any other assets that I had to put into the game. This allowed me to focus on learning Unreal and how to implement my 3D models into Unreal Engine, as well as how to get the rigs to work using Mixamo, and how to import that and the animation into the project itself. The main thing I learned from this was working in a team and how to lead that team and how to communicate within the team. One of the things I learned was that if you don't communicate something correctly, you might get given a model or set of models given back to you in the wrong format. So that's something I came across within this project, was that the levels designed by Callum were really good, but because I didn't communicate well enough with Callum, they were the wrong scales, so we had to fix them the day before the game was built, which we managed to do. But if I had just communicated that properly, then we would have completely avoided that. So that's something I want to fix in the up and coming game jams. I was really happy with my overall performance for this game jam. I felt I worked really well within the team, and I also felt that I learned so much in terms of importing and exporting models into a game engine. I am also hoping that in the future I can focus on creating more assets, as the main focus for me during this game jam was creating and learning blueprints and learning Unreal. So I'm hoping that in the later game jams I'm able to use my artistic skills more in creating assets for the game rather than creating blueprints. Up next is a short 1-minute clip of how the game jam turned out. Next up is Game Jam 2, the shoot 'em up game. So for Game Jam 2, I did get to create more assets, as I was the only artist on the team. However, my teammates weren't very cooperative, and this also meant that I still had to do the Unreal Engine blueprint codes. So Game Jam 2 was almost completely done by myself, with the exception of some small art pieces. So Game Jam 2 was really stressful, but I did also learn a lot from it, which I'm going to show you now. So my original role for Game Jam 2 was to be just the game artist, but due to absences I also became the coder. So that meant that my art assets sacrificed a lot in terms of quality, as I had to split my time between both. So I was really quite unhappy with the way the art pieces turned out. Small things to me, like the normals, I would forget about, and I'm usually pretty good at that. It also meant that I had to go back to doing sort of low poly assets. Again, where I did really want to try and push myself with the second one, but just due to the workload wasn't able to. One of the interesting things about this game jam that I employed was that it was randomly generated. So when creating the assets, I had to have that in mind. So I began by creating rooms, and in those rooms is where those props would spawn. So I created things like bedrooms, labs, and engine rooms and cockpits, and the game would choose which assets to load as it began, which was a really cool feature and was one of the things I was proud of that I implemented in this game jam. Upon reflection, I probably should have gone and talked to a lecturer about the group troubles I had. Maybe if I did, I would have been put into a different team, and then I would have been able to make better assets. But yeah, despite being unhappy with the quality of the work I produced, I was happy that I did at least get a game done and something to show off for the game jam. The only issue was it did cause me a lot of stress. And looking back, I definitely should have gone to a lecturer about it. But going forward, I think I'll be making sure to talk to my team members if anything goes wrong, and to the lecturers, to avoid stresses like this from happening again, so that I can actually focus on what I came here to do, which is create amazing game art. And unfortunately, in this project, I don't feel I achieved that. Up next is a short 1-minute clip of how the game jam turned out. Game Jam 3, the platformer game. So for Game Jam 3, I was one of two artists. I was given the role of creating all the 3D assets within the game, and adapting 2D art sent by the other artist into 3D. This was a really cool collaboration for Game Jam 3, as I got to constantly iterate upon art that was given to me and had lots of feedback from the team members on how to change my art. I think this was really helpful, as it meant that we came up with really cool looking and unique characters. One of the cool things I learned was how to retarget mocap data onto a custom rig. I did this by using Rococo's plugin for Blender, which allows you to retarget mocap data onto your own rig. It still requires a lot of cleanup after, but it was a really cool experience, and I'm glad it's something that I learned to do, and I look forward to exploring using mocap data in the future. I also learned how to bake textures onto the UV maps for this game jam. I used the texture atlas to texture the model. I then baked those selected colors onto a new UV map. This meant that I could then draw over those UV mapped textures to add more flair to the characters. So that was something that I really enjoyed doing. So each character had their own custom texture. Upon reflection, I really enjoyed the iterative process this game jam came with. Working with other people and constantly adapting upon my 3D models based on all of the feedback that was given to me was really fun. I also really enjoyed learning something new, that being the mocap retargeting, and it's something that I want to learn to get better at in the future, and maybe even utilize the mocap facilities within uni. Overall, I feel I've done really well within the team, and I felt I learned a lot in this game jam. One of the things I think I should look into in the next couple of game jams is learning how to use Substance Painter, as creating my own textures. Although it was fun, it was quite time consuming, and I think using something like Substance Painter would have fast tracked this slightly. So that's something I'm going to look into trying to implement into the upcoming game jams. Up next is a short 1-minute clip of how the game jam turned out.
3, 2, 1. Congratulations, you win!
For my 3D modelling assignment, I had to use 3ds Max, which was really difficult for me, especially coming over from Blender, as I'm really proficient in Blender. So going over to 3ds Max, I was really slow, I was incredibly frustrated with the program, it seemed to crash all the time, and I just found it really hard to get used to. But I stuck with it, and I'm proud to say now that I'm now able to use 3ds Max efficiently and can confidently make a model using it, which I definitely didn't think would happen. I was convinced that it was not going to be an easy thing to learn, but I'm proud I did learn it, and it's so useful to be software agnostic. Now knowing that if I join a company in the future, I'll be able to use either Blender or 3ds Max. And I now know that even if it was another software, is that I would be able to pick it up. So that's something I'm really happy I learned doing this module. I was also really happy with the way my model turned out, and I felt that it turned out really well. I'm used to making characters, and this was the first time I made a vehicle, and I was really happy with my hard surface modelling. Like I said, I'd never really done that before, and doing it in a new software was difficult, but I'm really glad I did it because I felt it really did look like the reference, and I'm proud of what I made. Here's how my model turned out in the end.
Style which already seems to bear the stamp of victory. On to the 30th milestone and to the bungalow. At the pitch, the camera sees him through well ahead at the end of lap 1. Speed 93.64, but the Norton's motor sounds just a little irregular.
So for Game Jam 4, I was responsible for creating the characters and sticking to the brief provided to me by the second years and also by the designers within my team. I found creating the characters for this game to be really interesting, as we decided to go with a character creator. This meant that I had to learn some advanced techniques such as morph targets, as we wanted to create characters that could change in mass and size. So I had to learn how to use morph targets and do a lot of research on how character creators are made and work closely with the programmers to make sure that everything was working correctly. I also learned to use Substance Painter in this game jam and found that really interesting and fun to use. It also meant that I was able to create nicer looking textures on things such as clothes, as well as some props like houses and things like that. And I really enjoyed using Substance Painter, and it's something that I want to get better at in the future. Up next is a short 1-minute clip of how the game jam turned out.
Ahoy, me hearty!
Overall, throughout this year, I felt I learned so much. Coming into the year, I only knew how to use Blender, and I've come out of this year knowing how to use Blender, 3ds Max, Substance Painter, Unreal Engine, and I've also come out of this year learning how to work within a team and look forward to working with more people in the future. But that's all from my dev diary. Thank you for watching. See you next time.